Hello, everyone. Welcome to Twist Gaming, where you get to play board games with us. I feel like Matt. It's kind of weird. All right, so I'm here with Adam from Kingdom Death. Thank you, Adam, for joining us. And how's it going? How's the combat? First day. How's it going?
Our first day was more insane than last year's first day.
Yeah.
Apparently, we had a line that went all the way down to the other wall.
Yeah,
and
all
then
the way down there.
Fanned out against it.
Oh,
And,
we started when it was all the way down at the end of the hall.
Gen Con Police was very kind to me today. He said, "Sir, you've been speeding, and we need to talk about bringing you back under the speed limit." I didn't even get a ticket,
That's
which
good.
is great. They just made sure that we kept the doors clear.
Yeah.
So we had to take the other half of the team that should have been on break at this point and get them to basically be the line guards. So we had the entire sculpting team, probably the most talented sculptors I've ever worked with in my life, being line guard for the whole day. They enjoyed it. They had fun chatting with the fans.
Yeah, no, I'm sure they did. So that's cool. So I know we have some cool new releases at the con. We have the Echoes of Death.
Yep.
That have a new system in place.
Yep.
I forget the name of it off the top of my head.
System.
The strain system. You want to tell us a little bit about that and the backstory of that?
Yeah. So the strain system organically sort of very holistic approach to game design. So I was working on the node system for the expansions of Death, and I finally got to a point where I was comfortable with what I had written and imparting that knowledge in a book to everybody to create their own campaigns. And once I was at that point, I thought, our fans really like sort of the brutal nature of the game, and some of them might enjoy having a system that allowed them to take all their content and then have it randomize what they're going to play. Like you tell me what campaign I'm going to have. Okay, that sounds reasonable. And thus began yet another sort of dark journey onto what was the beginning of the strain system. And the idea is just that in its most simplistic form, when you start a new campaign, you will go through a series of card draws from different little stacks that almost like a tarot card procedure, and it'd be like, all right, this game you're gonna fight the Gorm, and there's a white line too, interesting, two node ones, neat, cool, and your first nemesis is gonna be Butcher, all right, cool, so far so good. Your second one's gonna be the Manhunter. What? Okay, sure, whatever. That means taking something like the Manhunter and kind of bringing it more into the system with everything else, because currently it exists as a special showdown land only, which is nice, but doesn't really make it very modular. It just kind of like adds noise. So the system needs to populate the timeline in a way that's digestible. Otherwise, you'd end up with just like one of those years you have 7 story events back to back.
Yep. Year 16.
Yeah, that's not a great design. I'm sorry, guys. So once I had the system in place and we started messing with it in the office, we started thinking there's people who play this game a lot. And they play many, many, many campaigns. I think maybe you're familiar with that. Just
a little bit. A little bit.
So started to think, well, we have watchers, and they kind of erode history almost every time. So it's not like you're going to go back to a settlement and be like, yes, the tablets of wisdom left to us by our ancestors. We may start the game from where we left off. But there shouldn't be such a completely hard line. Like, there's a lore cycle that we're building that will sort of be unveiled as we continue with Kingdom Death and eventually into other products within the same universe. And it's starting to make sense a little bit to have sort of like persistent effects that the survivors in their either short-lived or long-lived journey through the darkness may leave behind. So in simplistic terms, strain system randomizes your campaign depending on how you played it. The next time you play, the strain system may change the cards that you end up drawing. You may, instead of having a Hands of Heat, have a different boon type of story event for that campaign.
Very cool.
Echoes of Death is, continuing that idea into a little product where you have 4, we're calling them milestone strain cards that sit on the milestone part of your settlement board, and they give you conditions, and if you meet them, it adds a fighting art to your deck permanently. I think my favorite example is the Gigantism. So I think, we have old Joe, who's a bigger model than the Butcher,
It's a little big.
Yeah, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
It's probably because he was the offspring of a bone eater at some point, and they physically get larger. The bone eaters are kind of like Kingdom Death Wendigos a little bit. The more skulls they eat, the larger or more powerful they become until they run off and join a bone eater society somewhere. So if you have a survivor with marrow hunger and they give birth, then that person they give birth to gets the Gigantism Fighting Art, and the Gigantism Fighting Art goes into your Fighting Art deck permanently. So every campaign you play, there's now this sort of like, strain. You can call it DNA. It's not necessarily always that. Okay. So it's sort of like you've done something in the game that has now changed the overall
environment that your game's in.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
And it was exciting. It was a fun place to play. I'm not sure exactly how that system looks fully expanded and unpacked yet. Whether we go really complicated and really minute the way these are for small bonuses, or we start to think about bigger things like, well, what happens when a settlement gets all the way to a gold smoke night and then they get wiped out? Like, what is left behind, right? Is there anything to gain from that? Does one of the survivors actually see this coming and just shoot off wildly into the darkness to come back as a haggard mess to the next settlement, gibbering incoherently and just flopping dead in front of everyone? Who are the survivors that are in your settlement when you begin your game? So these are kind of questions that are left to the players and unexplored that we're now starting to put little exploration notes into.
A lot more world building and kind of
yeah,
all that,
which
really
is
cool.
fun.
That's awesome. So the strength is, this is just a little taste of kind of what you've been working on for Campaign of Death.
It probably will go in Campaigns of Death. If it gets too big, I'll section it off, stick to what I had originally planned on doing and promised everybody, and make that a separate thing. Okay. But I think it would be nice to put it in the Expansions of Death.
That's awesome.
It would be a nice sort of footnote along with smoothing out, because it would allow us to add a system so now players can randomize their campaigns, and then it would also smooth out some of the expansions that don't really work that well for such a system, and then it'll allow us to bring the rest of that stuff kind of up to date with 1.5, maybe fix some of the card names that don't make sense, maybe not, what else?
But I think it's cool that your new
Where's
white
that
box,
trait card?
Yeah, that new white box is kind of more actual game content than promo fun content that you want to add.
It's game content.
Yeah, it's actual game content. So I think that was a really cool add for this year. All right, so we have that. And we talked about Campaigns of Death. That's wave 4, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. The only wave 3 is
Gambler's
Chest and pinups and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about wave 3 a little bit.
Sure.
I know you guys are working on Gambler Chest.
We are.
And I know, from what I've heard, it's a little bit out still.
Yep.
But I know you guys are hard working at it.
Yep.
So where you got... What are you enjoying with the Gambler Chest right now? And I know there's a lot of advanced KDM rules and all this cool, the stuff you just did with this new white box, all these cool little things. So what do you have going on in there?
The change to the game is tremendous. I knew that we had something awesome when we were playing, a playtest in the office with Kingdom Death Advance, and Ray, who is a very technical game player, he sticks pretty much to the rules, just wants to do the best thing every turn, doesn't really do much thematic playing at all, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. We gave him a pair of the advanced disorder and an advanced fighting art, which are things you gain from in this case, the survivalism philosophy, which is sort of the base philosophy that people start with, and that replaces how you age. It replaces your age. Okay. And so he had a fighting art, which is currently called Meat Shield. And a disorder called Selfish. And Selfish says...
Sounds like me.
A little bit. Selfish says you must...
It is now after 6 o'clock. If your badge does not say exhibitor, you must be exiting the hall. It is the end of the day for you guys in there. Thank you.
Selfish basically says you got to use Meat Shield if you can. Meat Shield says if there's a survivor adjacent to you, when you're about to take damage, you can swap places.
Okay. So kind of like Shield Mastery a little bit.
Just a little bit, right?
Okay.
But it's kind of a mean version of it.
Yeah, you're oh no, you take that for me. Bye.
A lot of advanced fighting arts kind of level up.
Okay.
And the condition that fills in one of their little tick boxes depends on the fighting art. Meat Shields is when someone dies from you using it. So, and of course, for the playtest, I left him at the point where he only had to get 1 to level it up to get the next card. So he is just immediately trying to talk everyone into like, oh, you should move here and attack, and like he's being sneaky and trying to get people killed. And they're like, what are you doing, Ray? So like we had this moment where usually very technical player all of a sudden like went full thematic. And so you have one survivor who's just being a selfish little piece of crap because he's trying to level this thing up, which when he does level it up will be a benefit for the settlement. So you could argue that I'm doing this for the good of all. Get under this line.
Everyone loves their survivor and doesn't want them to die.
Right. So it starts to change the way you think or the way we all know how to play the game about how you approach it.
Okay.
The other system that's sort of an extension to this is collective cognition. So collective cognition is a separate track you have, and you gain points in it by killing monsters. It is sort of right now a very loose version of just like how humans evolved. We ate food, we cooked it, our brains got more developed, we gained the ability to learn faster and to retain knowledge and how to share it and pass it on. It's kind of like culture, right? So if you kill level 1 monster, you get 1 collective cognition point. Kill level 2 monster, you get 2 collective cognition points. You can do that twice. Level 3, 3 times. So a level 3 monster is worth a total of 9 points, and a level 1 monster is only ever worth 1. So if you want to go up this track, and your campaign plan is, we're going to fight Screaming Antelopes level 1 in tier 20, you're not going to see any of that stuff.
Okay. So it forces you to like, kind of go out there some more and
risk
it.
Please play the rest of the game. You can play it safe, but you won't see anything.
Yeah, last campaign we did not play safe. We were out
You guys
there.
are like professionals, like literally.
I guess if there was a professional, I guess that would be us. But we just do really silly things, and chat goads us into everything.
Right.
And
yeah,
they
it
like
makes sense. They get to pick.
They get to pick. They love to always eat the bug. Mid-fight.
Mid-fight.
Like
great.
We were fighting the old master.
Oh, great.
And they
That's
wanted
a
to eat the
great
bug
time.
mid-fight. I'm like, you're really easy, guys. You have our wisdom potion. You're doing decent damage.
Did you make it or did you die?
We made it.
Oh yeah,
we made it.
They knew.
But I don't think we roll. I think they waited till the end.
Mess with Twitch Destiny.
No, the funny thing is, me and Matt get really mad. Like, this is the worst, and then they do it and they succeed, and we're just like, you're not learning your lesson. So no, we always have fun with that.
So collective cognition, as it levels up, gives you innovations that start to allow you to control the philosophy system a little better. It also makes it easier for survivors to share fighting arts, and it gives you the ability to have a protege. And having a protege basically says, if you have a protege and your survivor dies, the protege can inherit some or even the entire sum of that person's knowledge.
That's really
Which is
cool.
nice, because we wanted to have more kind of like touchdown points. It's like, American football metaphor. You're going to run this so far, and eventually you're just going to get blown up, but, all of your effort isn't going to go nowhere. The flip side of this, I think it means that survivors will have to level up faster.
Okay, so they're going to age a little bit
will
quicker.
probably be worth about 4 hunts, and that's it.
So
the
that's
whole
just for the
point
advanced
is,
rules.
Yeah, for advanced.
Yeah.
The whole point, instead of having people who typically per campaign, through all the data we've seen, there's always like 2 or 3 survivors that somehow manage to like live through almost all of it. There's like the ultimate badasses, and this is great, but it's not quite
That was
the
our last
design
campaign.
intent.
We did a new game plus with the Mist, and our 4 survivors just tore through everything through the whole campaign.
Yeah.
So
congrats, guys. Not the intent.
No.
So it'll be much more about inheritance and setting up things where you know when someone is going to either die or retire. Yeah. Retiring isn't the end for a survivor. You give a vocation. You can still contribute to the settlement in some meaningful way.
All right, very cool. Anything else about the gambling chest you can tell me, or?
That's a lot. And then the other layer of that is the scout system.
Attention
Oh, yes.
exhibitors, you have until 7 p.m. tonight to finish your cleanup. The exhibit hall will open for you at 9 a.m. tomorrow, and it will open for attendees at 10 a.m.
Thank you, Gen Con Voice in the Sky. All right. The scout system. So that is kind of add in a 5th player possibly, or
a little bit. If you decide to sort of, I'll use the loose terms, tech up your scout in that direction, you can, if someone dies, let's say the scout has the disguise kit, then they're like, oh, I'm actually still here. Okay, guys. And it's just like the scout being like, don't worry, I'm still here. And you just pick up his gear, sort of like give you a little extra life. But if your scout bites it along with everyone else, you're not bringing anything home. No gear, no knowledge. It's all just gone. So that's a pretty harsh penalty, I think, but it's thematic and it makes sense, right? Like the scout had to make us think about, okay, well, what are the logistics of death? What actually goes on, right? And the scout's primary job, if you can imagine, if you're setting up this civilization, and you're like, all right, we're going to go hunt these big-ass scary monsters because it's the only way we know how to survive, and we definitely don't want one of these monsters finding our settlement. The most important thing is to not run away and to bring a monster back home, right? So it's going to be Matt's job to enforce that. He's going to follow us in the dark with no lantern, and if someone books it, he gets them. They're dead.
So runaways no more.
We'll see. We'll see how it turns out. Right. So that's sort of like the death pack was a very important part of the game that isn't really covered in the rules much. It's just like, the survivors form a death pact. They know that it's a death match with this monster. The end. The scout's like, no, this is actually what's happening, because he's dealing with the logistics of death. He's like, all right, I got these 4 idiots. They're gonna go fight this monster. We gotta bring all this shit back. it may just be me. I got to figure out like something to get. I need ways to hide from other monsters while I'm on my journey. So it's been an interesting place to explore that I'm hoping will add like another layer to the overall experience. But at the same time, we don't want it to be so intrusive where like every campaign becomes about the scout. That's not cool.
So how big is the gambler chest going to be? Box-wise, like
probably about the same size as the core game. I mean, there's like, what, close to 30 narrative sculpts, Atnus, the Gambler, encounter monsters. It's getting there.
It's getting there.
It's getting there.
So,
but, again, I have to thank all the fans and you guys for your patience and your support. And, everyone today has just been saying, they're very excited for the content. They want to know when it's going to come, but they insist we take our time and do it right, and we do the brand justice. And that's a wonderful thing to hear.
And you did great with the first Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And
that was
we're going to trust you. And
a little bit late.
Yeah, a little bit.
It's a little bit late.
But, it's awesome.
Yeah. So I don't have any definitive information on when it will end yet.
Okay.
But if I do delay it, it's because I'm adding more cool stuff to it because I can't help myself. But we'll see. That's not the plan currently.
All right. So we talked a little bit about Gambler and Atnus. Like, how's those going on? Those.
Did you see the Gambler?
Yeah, I saw the Gambler. It looks beautiful.
200 Jack sculpted 276 humans for that thing by hand.
That's insane.
Every single one of them is different, and they're arranged in this beautiful organic. Like, just holding the ball and rotating was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. I'm like, what am I even looking at? This is like master sculptor level stuff. Worked for a year on one thing. What the fuck? So I'm hoping when we get to the plastic side of it, I can talk the factory into doing like a cool sliding core tool. Maybe make it so it's not a billion pieces.
Try to make it just the globe kind of one piece.
Yeah, like
or
here's
two
the
pieces.
Gambler shell. It has more parts than there are, continents on Earth. So enjoy figuring this out. Or countries on Earth, rather.
So who gets to do the design for the Gambler and Atnus? Is that something you've been working on, or you have the team working on it?
I think recently I've been moving more towards trying to be a better boss because I just want to run away alone and do everything myself until I can't look at it anymore, and then I just dump it on someone and run back off. So I think, after Gen Con's a great time where everyone's invigorated for me to like sit everyone down and show them what I have on everything, and then start to decide like, all right, who's going to work on what, how far are they going to bring it. So I want to make sure that the team continues to make work that's like on brand. And it was a lot of work with the Black Knight and the Screaming God because they're both so different from anything we've done.
Yeah, I haven't checked out the Screaming God yet. That's for this weekend. But we did the Black Knight, which was a lot of fun.
Perpetual motion showdown. Yeah, that was Wes.
Yeah, he hit the.
I was just gonna have it run to one end of the board, turn around, and shoot at you, and if you got up to it, it runs to the other, just like a jerk.
Yeah.
And he was like, "How about this? We make it so it's like like scrolling, like an old video game, and you're just like always in motion." I was like, "That's awesome. You think you can make that work?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think so." It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work to make it work. A lot of trial and error. Because it's easy to put it down, but to make it digestible so that you're not worrying about the rules and you're just letting the game remain in your imagination, it's a lot.
All right, so talk about Gambler Chess. Let's talk about some of the future So,
Beyond those two, you mean?
yeah.
Okay.
Although that's all Gambler Chess. That's all the Gambler Chest, right?
Screaming God's not in the game.
I'm sorry, not those.
Don't do this to me.
I'm
This is already enough to keep in.
Yeah,
you know?
no, I'll just make you spill everything.
Yeah, sure.
So, last year we talked a little bit about the campaigns and things that are coming up. How have things changed in the last year, design-wise and stuff? Have things grown exponentially? Like, how are things going, just in general?
How are things going in general?
With the new expansion, like your design philosophy from where you were last year to now.
Trying, as I said before, trying to be more of a responsible project lead.
Yeah.
Instead of, like, last Kickstarter, I just took the Sunstalker. I did the whole thing in a vacuum. I was like, I love this. Playtest it. They're like, hey, I think I want to. I'm like, no, we're not changing anything. Shut up. It's perfect. I still love it. I still think it's perfect. Screw what everyone else thinks. But I'm trying to do less of Adams in a vacuum, more of Adams being an open boss who speaks to us every morning, which is hard for me because at the bottom of it, I'm still a hermit who just wants to make things that I think are cool, and I'm very happy that other people like it and want to buy it. So learning that has been hard, and I'm going to continue to do so.
Okay. So as you guys are doing any of the new expansions grabbing at you a lot that you really enjoy that are coming, how they're coming along, or I mean, it's like kind of choosing a favorite baby, but favorite kid.
Besides these two,
yeah,
the Nightmare Ram has gone through a lot. I spent a pretty long time sort of reevaluating a lot of the design elements in it ended up being used for the Black Knight, strangely enough, because when I thought about it, I was like, we have this ram, and mountain goats climb mountains, and this mountain goat clearly climbs the inverted mountain. So, like, why is it in a labyrinth? Why isn't it climbing stuff? It was like there's just a disconnect from the very get-go. I'm like, what? Like, what? So now the fight is sort of taking place on these three, so I'm imagining it now where instead of it taking place in its garden, right, which was the labyrinth, it now takes place kind of just outside of it. It doesn't want you to get in. Why would it fight you in there? That doesn't make any sense. It's sort of like where we're at. So now I'm imagining, okay, well, if this thing was protecting its garden and it's sort of setting this up so people come to it, what would its most ideal sort of battleground be? And, obviously that would be no battleground. There's no way for you to fight me at all. That wouldn't really work because then it wouldn't have any way to get up and down either. So we have a series, basically, if you imagine of these giant shelves. So there's three of them, like three big steps, and that's kind of where you fight it. And so this thing is sort of like a super agile volleyball player where it will stab you with pinpoint precision, Fist of the North style, like a pressure point, and fill you up with glacial helium. So then you will kind of float like a big human balloon up, and then at the beginning of its turn, it'll spike you, sending you rocketing off the edge of the shelf into your doom. So it's a fight where you are constantly climbing back up. It's jumping on you and knocking you down.
Okay, that sounds really cool.
Yeah, so when there was a lot of different versions of this, the original one was way too complicated. It had tiles that were breaking. It had chasms. The whole board was set up in an MC Escher way. It was just this is cool, Adam, but I don't even know how to move this thing right now. I'm like, no, it's really easy. You just if there's a wall space, you can just walk right down it. I'm like, all right, that makes sense, but am I above it? If I'm above it on the wall, what's going on? I was like, all right, maybe we can simplify this one a little bit. Perhaps I see your point. And we've been at a point where we've been smoothing it out and fine-tuning it and kind of removing the stuff that thematically seemed cool from the technical gameplay, and instead just putting those as, the cool stuff that happens, as opposed to you trying to figure out
the technical part of it,
how this works in imaginary 3D space.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's coming along. I'm pretty excited about how it turns out in the end. He's a cool monster. We've never done a super duper agile on the edge of things fight. And the Black Knight is sort of a bruiser who smashes you through things. And that's where the Ram was originally, and didn't feel right. It's like, no, he's the one that leaps into the air, moves so unnaturally, everyone stops for a second before he lands and just knocks you off. Oops. So that made more sense.
Yeah. What else can we talk about? So the expansions. How about the new campaigns? How are those looking?
In the Campaigns of Death?
No, we have the Dark Knight.
The Inverted Mountain campaign?
Inverted Mountain campaign, all the little campaigns.
Anna's heading that up, and she wants to make them, since it's an Inverted Mountain campaign, and you start kind of at the base of this thing in this weird, Nightmare Pond type area. She wanted to make it a lot more about sanity. So her main idea for the Inverted Mountain campaign is you have a lot less survival and a lot more insanity, and the innovations that you get there use insanity in similar survival ways. So you get like insanity actions instead of survival actions. You still have survival actions, it's just your pool is a lot more limited. So you wouldn't be relying on dash and surge the same way we are now for high-level gameplay. Instead, you'd be relying on making sure your survivor goes into a fight with 30-plus insanity. Because you're, fighting things hanging off a cliff that's not good, which is cool. It's different, and it's made us explore new areas, which is fun.
It's really cool. That's most of the questions I have.
Okay.
Anything else you want to talk about? Make sure everyone at home knows, or
I'm sort of drawing a blank right now. It's been a lot of work. As I've been telling people on the floor, our manufacturing partner, who's been wonderful to us, let us know that next year he has a massive project coming in. He does stuff beyond just miniatures. Okay. The miniatures is like the hobby part of his business.
Okay. Is this your resin caster or your plastics?
The plastic. So he was pressuring me to get as much done this year as possible. So this year was much more about plastic for me, and I wasn't leading dev as I should. So now I have to kind of like level things back up to sort of catch up, which is fine. So we're pretty far ahead on the plastic. We brought everything new that we could to the show, but there's like a ton of stuff that's done and just like waiting in line to be milled and then injected. So I'm hoping by Black Friday I have a lot to show, which would be great. Here we are another year later. There's a bunch of stuff. That'll be a good feel good, I think. And I think most importantly, I continue to be just in awe and in utter horror of everyone's support and love for the game. Like, it's definitely grown well beyond me. Like, I think I'm an okay guy. I'm nowhere near as cool as Kingdom Death is at this point, Like, I get to speak for it because I made it up, but I have such a massive team at this point. It's crazy.
How many guys you got on the team now?
And there's 23 of us here. And there's a few people who couldn't make it. Anna, Lockman. And that's not even counting, like, the freelancers that we work with sometimes. Last year, after taxes, Anna was like, we paid 45 different people. You managed 45 different people over the course of the year? I'm like, no. How did this happen? But it's great, And I just am, like, honestly shell-shocked and flattered. And I know that it's not speaking for everyone and thanking everyone for their patience, because there's plenty of people out there who are like, shut the fuck up, Poots. Finish working. Stop glad-hatting us. Like, giant Kingsman statue's nice. Hire more people, get it done. But, I'm just thankful that there are people out there, I think the majority, who are happy and love the content and understand that to make something nice takes time.
I thought one other question. I know you kind of spoiled the video game thing you're working on. Is that going anywhere, or
very slowly? There's two guys here working on it,
Yeah.
Jose and Jerron. They're instructed to say
earlier.
nothing.
Yeah.
And that's just been like, a side project. It's nothing more than that at this point.
You just have two people kind of working on that. That's all they do, and
yeah.
And you put input every now and then, basically.
Yeah, it's fun. It's like a nice sort of like mental break here and there, but it's not obviously on the main plate at the moment. Main plate at the moment is all the promises I've made to all these people. That's the main thing.
All right. I think that's it. Thank
Cool.
you so much, Adam.
Yeah, thank
for
you.
Sitting down and standing and talking with us in
Yep.
front of this amazing thing.
I mean, they don't know. Is our legs in view? Do you know we're standing? Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I think We would be really tall if we're sitting. I mean,
What if it's just a bus? I don't know.
I could.
I'm
who
being
knows?
stupid.
So thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
Oh yeah.
Thank you,
Also,
everyone, for
thank you
watching.
guys for running your awesome channel.
Yeah, no, we have a ton of
your,
fun.
Your Twitch channel is amazing.
Yeah.
It's
And,
been a pleasure to pop in and watch every
Yeah.
now and then.
and we're excited for our next campaign. It's just going to be probably
How many
insane.
hours of Kingdom Death have you guys played at this point?
On stream, we're probably hitting
On
around
stream.
400 hours.
Whoa.
Last I count was like 300 something, so I'm
Whoa.
probably around 400 hours.
Wow.
Just a lot of.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah. No, it's.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, it's. But yeah, and we're going on our 6th campaign. Our last one took a whole year. It was a new game plus with it, but
Right.
we made it to the end, and Barish came on and watched us beat up the Gold Smoke Knight. He was very sad. I think it was that sad, but
yeah. When your monster gets beat up, you're kind of like, come on.
he
That's
got
bullshit.
beat up and he didn't touch anyone. I think our most damage was checking a Canthus plant and taking arm damage. So
Wow.
it
That's
was-
pretty bad.
It was a little sad, but he just blamed our new game plus and said we just did stupid stuff.
I mean, the game allows for that flexibility. you
Yeah,
know?
no, it's all the fun. So thanks everyone for
Yeah, thank you guys.
joining in, and stay tuned for more Gen Con coverage.
Yeah, just KD all the time. That's it.
We'll have more
Every
KD
day.
coverage too.
Never
but,
stops.
yeah.
It's Kingdom Death forever.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.